How are you?
Good morning, my brother.
And Doc is
I'm doing
joining.
great.
Doc is joining us today to discuss two things. First one has to do with the president's journey to Kumasi. He says he's meeting chiefs and he's meeting MMDCs on the issue of Galamsey. Buachi Riley said that when he started his administration in 2017, he said he's put his presidency on the line to deal with the matter. Well, 6 years down the lane, how is it going? And then secondly, we'll talk about the Moody's downgrade currently. Doc, let's start with the
Yes.
issue of what is happening with the president's visit to Kumasi, and that looks very official, and what he says he's going there to do. What are your thoughts on then the latest move by the president in the fight against illegal mining?
Good morning to your listeners. I think the president has lost track of almost everything, and I believe strongly that he has forgotten his job description. Because why is the president rather appealing to chiefs to do what he is supposed to do? He has the police, he has the military, he has control over laws that can be passed. So he has at some level, he controls the legislature because he has a majority. So if there are laws he has to make, he can go to parliament. If he wants the military to go there and enforce the laws, he can deploy them. What has chiefs got to do with this? The chiefs are basically used as pawns to window dress mess that the president has caused. But I don't think that will resonate with Ghanaians because almost every promise he made has not been fulfilled. But this Galamsey menace is becoming a serious threat to our national security and also to livelihood of people because cocoa is going. Because people are buying cocoa farms and then turning them into Galamsey arenas. And it's a big disease of underdevelopment, but Ghana has contracted a higher level of it. So I think the president can travel around as much as he wants to travel. It still doesn't change the narrative that he has failed in controlling his own officials who are into this deadly business, causing a lot of problems because the water bodies are getting destroyed, causing a lot of problems. And these are going to have serious consequences on the living condition of people along those areas. So the president, for me, is just now acting leadership and not really exercising leadership.
And talking about the chiefs, you do know that land is usually vested in the traditional authorities. I know when they find something like minerals on that land, it becomes a state. It is actually a state-owned property, but they must first declare it. So the chiefs own the land, so they are in the position to sometimes give the lands away on the blind side of the government. Isn't it important that you engage such an important stakeholder?
You see, the chiefs give lands, but regulation is under the presidency. You cannot mine when you don't have a license. The chiefs don't issue licenses. State can take over lands if they want to do so. So regulation is what has failed here. And it's all because the president is looking the other way. Because before you can mine, whether it's large scale, it's medium scale, or small scale, called Galamsey, you need to go and get a license. Someone has to issue it. The person issuing it is an appointee of the president or under the appointee of the president, and for that matter, the minister. We have the EPA, which is also under him. Almost all the regulatory bodies are under him. So the supposition is that the president will regulate whoever is undertaking these activities. We are in 2022, and technologies are available to make sure that you do mining without damaging the environment. And when you take the regulation, once you're given a license, all these things are spelled out. But people do whatever is convenient for them. And the president is not enforcing that. When I say president, it means every institution under him, he's the one that the buck stops with. So if ministers are not doing well, agency leaders are not doing well, it's the president we have to hold accountable. Why are people not doing that in the United States? They're not doing that in Germany. They're not doing that in some of even the emerging countries. The Chinese messing up our environment. They can't try it in their own country. The difference is that they have leaders who are enforcing the law, who are regulating, and also care about their own people. Because we are mortgaging the future of our country for, mess or pottage, for the comfort of the Chinese.
So the failure of the president is a failure of regulation and enforcement.
Sure. And, he has just opened the gate for MPP members. I read about the Wontumi issue. See, a member of his party, is so emboldened to go in to start mining without complying with the regulation, and nobody's doing anything. People have gotten away with almost everything. Nobody has been held accountable. When President Mahama was there, basic bias branding, a minister had to resign. But here, the president is not, like I said, he's acting leadership. Because he can just pass law, he can deploy the military, he can ask the police to go and enforce the law. Now he's traveling to chiefs to discuss how to do it, how to regulate, how to do his job. So I think he has completely mortgaged his responsibility for nothingness.
And one of the groups that he'll be meeting are the MMDCEs. That breaks into sharp focus our whole decentralization process. Are the MMDCs failing us, or still you think the president still has to take ultimate responsibility?
Well, DCE, what can DCE do? DCE, nobody elected DCEs. You see, it's just like you go to a landlord. Landlord has done something and you go to blame the houseboy. What has DCEs, MMDCs got to do with regulation? Well, at the local level, they have some rule, but the buck stops with the president and the ministers. If they want to enforce it, they can deploy the military to go in there and make sure nobody does anything that compromises the sanctity of the living conditions of our people. So I think it's just, like I said, you just want to put up a show to make it look as if they're fighting it. But nobody is doing anything, and the president is not holding anybody accountable. I listened to the minister, that is the Minister of Lands, and then he was also blaming other people. So you blame chiefs who don't have the military, who don't have the police, who don't have EPA under them. They can only, collaborate with government. And when the chiefs themselves break the law, they're supposed to be, prosecuted. So you can't blame the chiefs, you can't blame the MMDCs. The MMDCs, they take orders from the president. So why would the president need to travel around to, collaborate with them? He just needs to enforce the law. And I think that has been missing, especially in this government. They've left everything to the wind.
And then that's why you're saying the president is standing up, looking the other way. That's exactly what you said.
Exactly.
What should the president? What do you want to key steps do you want to see the president take to convince you that this time around, for the first time, it is not a show, that he actually means what is the steps he's taking?
Well, if China president is doing it, why can't our president do it? You can't do that in China. You can't do that in US. And it boils down to the leadership. The president can enforce laws if he wants to do that. You see, and that is the reason why we don't call him anything but president. It means that he has a lot of executive power that he can use to tell everybody that he has banned Galamsey and nobody can touch anything in that country. If you look at the degradation taking place, the trajectory is very scary. I believe at some point we have to import water, drinking water and other things. Farmers now use sachet water to help, to irrigate their crops. It doesn't make sense. It means that our resources are depleting and everything is getting into a mess. So I think if we don't begin to make our voices be heard, the president will continue on this trajectory and our country will continue to diminish in several ways.
I wanted to link this to the whole issue of the situation of the economy. There are lots of people who tell us that gold is one of the is the most expensive currency in this world, much more valuable than the reserve currency, which is the dollar. We have a lot of it. People are mining it. We can't account for it. Meanwhile, we are in the difficulty we find ourselves. To what extent is it important that perhaps we take hold of our gold if we really want to get out of this economic quagmire?
Well, the first thing is it's sad, and I agree 100% with you. If we were to use our gold to back our currency, it would have been very strong. See, for the dollar, for example, the American government can print as much as they want of it because it's in high demand. So when they print it, it will not cause any mess in the economy because people want it across the globe. So it's going to just fit into the equation. But with our currency, nobody wants it because it's not backed with anything. So if it were backed with gold, it means that it could be in high demand. And I think this is what Gaddafi advocated. But the economic management is so poor. It's like they stopped thinking. And the economy is now on autopilot, just doing whatever it wants to do because of all the mess that they started, causing from the beginning, focusing more on stealing state resources than managing them. So I think the leadership of our country is seriously flawed. And if we don't do something about it, a lot of other horror things will come. Because economic management needs very decisive and credible leadership. And there's a serious vacuum in that respect.
So far, we've seen downgrades from Fitch. Moody's is the latest one. We haven't seen the S&P yet. From what you understand of the market, what are they telling us with the downgrades?
Well, they're telling us that we are not credible, we are not trustworthy, we have serious economic management issues, and it means that investor confidence will continue to dwindle. And Moody is a very credible organization, so it's just like a teacher that gives you a grade. When they give you D, you can explain it as much as you want to explain it, but you've gotten a D. Everybody who failed will have some attribution. So downgrading it to the CAA2 means that Ghana is a very risky country when it comes to investments. And it's really so. Because as basic as opening bank accounts for your business, just try it. And then you see how complicated it is, because everything seems to be so disorganized. And if you look at the downgrading, it has a very multiple effects on the economy. Number one, it means that government will have to do local borrowing. And when government borrow locally, interest rates will go up because government is competing with the private sector. And when that happens, it means that government will borrow internally, national debt will increase, and then it's also going to cause inflation in some sense, because inflation is already, so high. Because if the private sector cannot afford to borrow, it means that reinvestment will not exist. And then the supply side is going to be handicapped. And that can even escalate the inflation more. We are already important. And then the little that we produce locally is going to be a problem. And then even with the Galamsey, I read somewhere, some journal reporting that Ghana now own nothing when it comes to our gold. So it means that there's going to be serious repatriation of earnings. The few dollars we have in the system, the investors will take them away. So the CD is now going to be, falling like nobody's business. So the downgrade has actually, for me, has presented our economy the way it should be. Because the economy is so messed up. And this is the true state. Moody is just telling us that this is where we are. And the expenditure that, we use our revenue to incur, if we don't do something about that, it's going to even worsen, because after we pay our bills, that is, we service our debts and also pay salaries, what is left is about 27%. Just imagine a worker. You receive your salary and then you pay out everything and you're left with 27. What can you do with that? So many of the flagship programs I predict will go down. That is, free HSS is going to go down. And then also there's a tendency, the NARCOP, I don't know whether it's still on, but it's still going to go down.
NAPCO has already gone down.
And at some point, yes, and most of them will go down, because they were all built on shoddy foundations, and they're going to collapse as a result of what is going on. So for Moody's downgrade, it was bound to happen, and it's even going to get even worse.
Already, we are facing higher inflation. High inflation, you're saying that it will only get worse.
Yes, because our inflation is import driven. It's not that we have money supply like other countries. US is being attributed to money supply. In Ghana, it's not like that. The earnings hasn't increased. Workers' salaries remain the same. So it's supply issue. Supply chain, we don't produce anything. And also the mining sector is costing a lot more, because most of the people in that industry and oil are expatriates. So they expatriate their earnings in dollars. So it depletes it. And now the downgrade also means that we cannot borrow externally. So there will never be inflow of foreign currency into our country. And the dollar situation is going to, I just pity the CD, because the CD is going to continue to be useless. At some point, nobody will want it. People will start trading.
And that's the point dollars we are coming to. Actually, but for devaluation, which knocked off a few zeros of our CD, we are exchanging more than 100,000 units of our CD for $1. And if we go on our website this morning, radiogoldlive.com, the report is that we are currently selling at 10.75 CDs to $1. You are saying that that is even just the beginning.
It's just the beginning, because if you look at the chain, all the economic indicators are pointing downwards. Most of the things, because they are connected. Now, interest rates will go up because you are borrowing locally, competing with the private sector. Cost of capital is going to go up. And then Bank of Ghana also made a mistake and increased interest rates. You see, what they do is more textbook economics. In the West, in America here, we spend credit. Most people use credit and spend it. So the moment you change interest rates, it responds to it because people will now be disincentivized from borrowing because cost of borrowing is high. In Ghana, we don't. It's a cash-based economy. So when you increase interest rates, you are only making it worse for businesses because mostly loans are purchased by businesses. So you are making cost of production go up. And that's exactly what the Bank of Ghana did recently. Now, if that happened and then production cannot go up, what it means is that the inflation situation is going to get worse. And it gets to a point people have to want to use local substitutes. And because production is low, local substitutes too will not be available. So we are back to where we got to in the late 70s when Achampon had the sanctions on Ghana.
Before I come to the issue of the IMF, how should government be responding at this time? Because I don't know to what extent the IMF can solve the problem, but what should be government's response?
You see, IMF, they have one template, and they tell you the same thing. Every country goes there, they tell you cut down expenditure, create some austerity measures. And you see, where we are, even if you cut expenditure, it will help in the short term, but the long term impact will always be there unless government is prudent enough to invest in productive sectors. Number one, I have advocated cutting down imports. And sometimes the way to do it is to create some inconveniences. If you decide not to produce poultry today, poultry products, local producers will be forced to produce to meet demand. In the short term, there will be problems, but at some point, it will begin to normalize. And then you look at the, oil industry. We import a lot of crude oil, petroleum products, and then export crude oil. So there has to be a way to refine the oil in Ghana and then use it. That can bring down a lot of cost. There are other useless expenditure that we need to cut down because recurrent expenditure is one of the nemesis of all developing countries. Governments make useless expenditures. And then sometimes the issue is that they go into increase taxes where they shouldn't increase taxes. For example, on import of vehicles. If you increase taxes there, people can decide not to import again. But if you make it cheaper, there's a tendency people will import in large quantities, and that may bring in more revenue. So sometimes it's not good to increase taxes in expectation that, when you increase it, people will pay. Evasion is going to reduce how much you receive. So the revenue side is now the problem, how to generate more revenue. When people are all heading, businesses are closing up. So where do you go to tax? So I think the expenditure is still on the table, and that's where government should cut a lot and try to invest in agriculture in the short term. If at some point in time we'll produce enough to reduce our dependence on imports, and the imports, once they reduce, the demand for foreign currency may also go down. Now, inflation will come down because production is taking place. Our GDP goes up, and then investors may have confidence, begin to, re-establish some level of confidence, and that can help the economy.
Doc, Thank you very much for speaking to us this morning.
Okay. Thank you very much, my brother, for inviting me.
Dr. Justice Salifu is a management and organization expert based in the U.S. We're speaking to us about two things, Galamsey, and then the issue of the economy, the approach to tackling those issues. We'll be